everyone, welcome to LaLa Land. Today, I'm honored with the presence of Amber Mack. Amber, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me for the interview.
Of course, Amber is the president of Amber Mack Media, an award-winning development agency. She is also an award-winning podcaster and best-selling author. In 2021, she was named Bay Street Bull Woman of the Year, which I love. And this year, she was named one of DMZ's Woman of the Year. On top of all of that, Amber has keynoted more than 500 events around the world. Wow.
It's a lot of speaking, a lot of stages.
Wow, that's honestly just so impressive that you've done all of this. And today I really want to go into a little bit of your story behind everything that you do. And I know that you're a woman in tech, which is pretty rigorous, and you don't see a lot of women in tech a lot recently. So I kind of want to just talk to you about your career, how you found that, and we'll just go into that a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm super looking forward to it. I think you're exactly right. You know, when I started as a woman in tech, I assumed, 10, 15 years later, there would be lots of women in tech reporting on the emerging technology scene, and that has not been the case. There are still very few women, especially if you look at some of the big tech companies. There are very few women who are leading tech companies or reporting on technology. So there's lots of room for more women to come into the fold.
We need more women in tech, listeners. Okay, so I want to hear a little bit about that. So you are a woman in tech, and you said that you didn't see a lot of other women there. What was that like for you? Was it intimidating at the beginning, or did you have any experiences that kind of made you feel belittled?
Well, I think I saw it as an opportunity more than anything. So my background is in journalism. I also moved to San Francisco and worked in the tech scene for a few years, but I really wanted to report on technology. And so I saw this opportunity when I came back to Canada to really fill this void that existed, because there weren't a lot of women reporting on technology. In fact, my very first resume tape that I made for a job on TV doing technology, I said that I wanted to be the Oprah of tech. I know you love Oprah.
Love that. I love Oprah.
You will like this story, because I saw a lot of women who were, in the fashion industry, who were in lifestyle jobs. I didn't see a lot of women who were focusing on this incredible industry that was growing so quickly. And so it was a little bit intimidating at first, because there weren't that many women. I certainly have horror stories about being one of the few in those early days. But I think the reality is that it's such an incredible space to be in, because so much is happening, and it's such an exciting world.
Was there any point that was so challenging that you thought, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I should give up?
Well, one of the things that I think is true in terms of my experience in technology is that I started reporting on technology in the broadcast industry. So I was often surrounded by teams of people. And so that was very comfortable and actually very fun to be on TV and in radio talking about technology. You had all that support. But I would say when I started speaking as a professional speaker and going on stage by myself, like, public speaking is the loneliest job in the world. It pays well, it's a great opportunity, but you really don't have a team around you. So you're out there by yourself. So for me, that was the most intimidating, because I was going on stages, I was speaking to audiences of hundreds and hundreds of people and talking to them about the future of technology. And I think especially in those early years, there's a lot of people who were skeptical that a young woman would understand what that space was all about. So I really had to work over the years to build credibility in that space. And that's sometimes exhausting and daunting. But now I'm at the point where not only do I feel confident on stage, but I hope to help other women along the way.
What was it that pushed you to want to keep on accomplishing different roles in the public speaking industry? It's challenging, it's hard, it's exhausting. Why were you like, I need to continue doing this? What was that?
Well, it is true even today in 2024 that oftentimes when I go to speak at a conference, there just aren't that many women, let alone women of color. I mean, it really is often stages that are filled with men. And so I think one of the things that kind of drove me in those early days is I wanted to be able to share a different perspective about technology. I didn't want to talk about technology just for the sake of, the impact it would have on the economy. I also wanted to talk about the impact it would have on families, on children. And I wanted to kind of bridge those worlds together. And that's a uniquely, I think, feminine perspective. So for me, it was really important to be a voice out there so that other women could feel inspired and want to be on those stages. It's not happening as fast as I think we need it to happen, but I'm starting to see more and more women who are playing a role, who are getting on stages, who are getting their voices heard.
So on the note of women, something that is so often heard is, if you do this, you can't have a family. You won't be present for your family. You're not going to be a good mother. You have to pick one or the other. And I think that's really hard for just a lot of girls to hear. And I think it can also be the reason why a lot of people just let go of their dreams, because they're like, I want to be a good mother. Like, I am blessed with the opportunity to have kids, and maybe I just have to let go of my career. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if we look at some of the challenges that women face, I mean, there are systemic barriers all around us. The world is not really set up for women to thrive, you know, as mothers and also as business leaders. I mean, there's barriers all along the way. But one of the things that I've always really wanted to focus on is the fact that nobody gets to define you. Nobody gets to say that you only fit in this small little box. All my career, I've had people say to me online and in person, oh, well, you know, I only want your opinions on tech. I don't want to hear about your opinions as a mom, or maybe it's the other way around, whatever that might be. People constantly pressuring you to actually live in this tiny little box. So one of the things that I have always tried to focus on over the years is that nobody gets to define me. I can have a range of things that I do. In fact, I would go as far as to say that it is having that range of interests and experience that will lead to the most success in your career and in your life. So again, you know, don't let anyone put you in this narrow little path of success. If you're interested in a whole bunch of things, figure out a way to make them work. And you can do that as a businesswoman, as a mom. You don't have to let anyone else define you.
So I loved how you talked about a narrow path of success, because that's what really this podcast is about. It's about showing young youth leaders that there's so many different ways to reach success. And so I really want to go into the 2 books that you wrote, because I think that kind of plays into this. One of them is a parenting book, and I think that's so cool because not only did you become a successful female tech entrepreneur, podcaster, author, all of the things, but you used being a parent as a tool to become more successful.
Absolutely. So when I wrote my first book, which is totally outdated, so don't buy it because it's from many years ago, I wrote about how to build a business in the social media space. And it was a very exciting time, and I was very optimistic, maybe even a little bit naive about the technology world. And I believe it could just bring positives after positives after positives. But then I think what we've started to see over the years with social media is the negative effect that it could have on the mental health of young people. And so I felt compelled to write another book that was focusing on tips to help parents and families navigate through this world of social media. So my second book was almost kind of an apology to the first book because I started to recognize the dangers of big technology and the social media influence on young people. And I worried about my own son who was coming into this space as well. So those 2 books I think are complementary in some ways, but really wanted to be able, again, to have that range of topics that I could talk about.
Wow. So, okay, so you wrote your first book, and then it was power friending, and then you had your second book about parenting. When you had your son, did you get any backlash from the tech industry of people saying, "This, you need to take a break, maybe oh, she's not going to make it through with a kid now"? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this pressure that I felt was real pressure that existed out in the world. But I think the reality is I also put a lot of pressure on myself. So for example, when we were shooting our podcast in the early days of podcasting, we would shoot videos as I was pregnant where we would just shoot higher and higher. So eventually I was just head, so no one could see that I was pregnant because I was worried what people would say about that, right? So I think now if I were to redo that, and I encourage young people to do it, and I think we're seeing more and more women sort of present themselves as they are, I would have embraced that part of life and said, hey, you know what? I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby. I would have been more open about it, but I just had never seen anyone do that in my space. And so I tried to kind of hide it a little bit. So there was pressure there, but I think again, the unique thing about that is you get to kind of, fight back against that and define who you are by going out there and creating your own path in terms of what you can do. So that's one thing that I have always felt is as much as I feel pressure, probably, I don't want to say anger overrides that, but motivation overrides that in terms of not letting anyone sort of define who I am. And I think that's one of the things that's really hard, especially for young women, but super, super important because we're so often told, hey, if you're like this, you can't be also be this, right?
Yeah.
You can't be a number of different things. And I get this still today on social media. I even, on a weekly basis, people will say to me like, oh, I just want you to talk about tech. I don't want you to talk about politics or business or parenting or anything. I liked it when you just talked about tech.
Yeah.
And those messages frustrate me the most, as though women are somehow one-dimensional and guys get to exist in this, multi-dimensional world. And I think that's one of the things we have to really fight back against.
That is the biggest challenge that I really want to highlight on this podcast. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I'm like sick and tired of being stuck in a bubble, and I don't want any other girls to feel like they have to be stuck in that. You can accomplish anything you want. You could be a doctor and a writer and all the things that you want to be and talk about everything you want to do. So I'm just so glad that you really highlighted that. And I have one more question for you that I ask all of my guests on this podcast. What does success look like to you?
Success to me really is the freedom for me to make decisions about my time. And one of the things that I've always wanted to be able to do, and I'm in that position now, is that if my son has some type of event that I need to be at in the middle of the day, or if I have a sick family member, I always want to be the one who can decide to go and do those things, right? So success to me is essentially the freedom to make decisions and to have choices in my life versus someone else making those choices for me.
Wow. Thank you so much. And thank you all of our LaLa Land guests for tuning in today. This is Amber Mack. Thank you.
Thank you.